I'd like to carry on this theme that Hussam has given to us, working at designing locally distinctive neighbourhoods. And how can we achieve genuine local distinctiveness? And I have a series of examples, mostly from Aarhus, but there's also some from Sweden. So special thanks to the university here and the Urban Design Group for facilitating, arranging this. Special thanks to you, Hussam, for this. A lot of work gone into doing this seminar, so that's good. We're going to be talking about the relationship between the town, the city centre, the suburbs, and of course, the countryside, the rural districts. I was in the Victorian Albert Museum here in Dundee. This was the illustration there. It's the original, actually by Patrick Geddes and his son, Alistair, showing the idea of production and relationship to nature. And this also worked very much with this holistic approach to working with nature and civilization at the same time. So this is something we're going to be talking about more and more in relation to all these different projects. Unfortunately, the texts are not so visible on the screen today. I think it's something to do with the lens, but it's going to be a kind of a cross-section from the inner city out towards the suburbs, through the suburbs and into the rural areas. And I'm showing this map of Aarhus, this overview, formerly the container harbour, which has been transformed. And these are the different themes and ideas I've been working with post-war: unprecedented growth, cross-section of city, managing growth, inner city neighbourhoods, the edge of the city, suburban growth, satellite green new towns, rural communities and village clusters, polycentric centres, walkable communities, 15, 20 minutes, cities. So these are themes I'll be touching upon. This is where I'm based here in Aarhus. Here, I'm going to be showing projects from Melling, Rue, Silling, and also Malmo, over here in Sweden. So there's a kind of an axis going on here, talking about these Scandinavian projects. But this is my town, Aarhus. It's the black area is the map from just after the war, 1950, and the red area is the growth since then. So 50 years growth. You can see the town has grown 2/3 compared with what it was in the 50 years. The town's been on the go for 900 years. So you think it's this suburban growth showing a typical housing estate, industrial quarters, and social housing on the outskirts of the towns in suburbia. So it's segregated city planning, really. And this is a typical villa located in the largest housing estate in Denmark. And single family homes represent 27 total housing, but make up approximately 50% of the city area. And that does actually say something about the challenges we're facing just by single family homes and just going out on large parcels of ground. So when we talk about the urban morphology, these are a couple of slides. One showing some of the housing from the post-war period, and this is an inner town district, showing how readable, recognizable the place is, easy to find your address, easy to understand the identity of it. It's recognizable thresholds, whilst the indistinct city, these suburbs with social housing, often made in concrete, are difficult to understand where you are, find your address. Lots of landscape which no one has any responsibility for. Whilst here you have a street frontage, you have an entrance, and you have courtyard, gardens, and these people living in these urban blocks recognise and understand them. So this illustration from Leon Krier illustrates some of the challenges we've been facing over the years. And this is where we are at the moment. And this idea of the European city compared with, for example, the car city, which has been developed after the Second World War. And now we're readdressing that. And some of the themes that Stephen has just addressed, you can recognise it in these concepts here. So whilst there was the city architect in Aarhus, the councillors decided we must build a lot more affordable housing during that period. So I was lucky to be part of this project of making quality guide for affordable housing, because we're going to build 1,600 homes quite rapidly. So I made a study with all the housing associations in Aarhus and did a study trip, and we made this booklet here together, looking at these different themes, these community, urban qualities, architecture and placemaking. You could argue, of course, placemaking could be positioned here. They are actually seen as a whole in a holistic manner. But these are the themes I think are still relevant. They're from 2016, I made this booklet. But when I'm talking about the projects now, many of these themes are necessarily discussed, because this is where I started viewing developers' housing schemes too. I started asking them questions, how do you design your project? We would like you to look at this in terms of looking at the urban life before you design the urban spaces, and then you can design the buildings. It's often the other way around. So you get in these buildings and there's a bit of space left over. And it's very difficult to work with. So we were saying, no, we want you to work this way, turning it around and emphasizing the importance of city life is probably the most important thing. Many people say the ground floor, forget about the rest of it. The activities at ground floor and the way they interface with the urban realm is very important. So this just very quickly. We have a lot of brownfield sites. These have all been developed or in the process of being developed, these red dots. You can see some of them are linked into these public transport corridors. This is a light railway line that runs down through the town, up through the town and onwards. It's 90 kilometres of existing track, and we built 12 new in the centre of town. I'm going to talk about some of these new developments on the outskirts of Aarhus. But it's this transport developed, TOD, transport orientated development, talking about compactness along these corridors, where we have new developments taking place. So following this map, this area here, it was the depth of water was too shallow, so the ships had to move out further out. We built a new harbour area just behind my back here, and this became an area for development. So this whole area here, the Southern Harbour District, was part of an international competition, and a map plan was made, and this is a part of the status we are at the moment. A lot more buildings gone on since this photograph was taken, but the whole harbour front has been transformed. And this is a brownfield site which is being transformed, right? So it actually looks like this now. In the process from year 2000 today, this work is ongoing. The town is currently working on these sites here, but I'm going to go into some of these areas here, and you say, I call this a distinctive neighbourhood. And I mean, people discuss it and say, well, this is just crazy. It's got everything here. It's very high density, but it's right out in the bay. Remember, it's not right in the middle of the town in an existing area. This has made an opportunity to work in the harbour area with another type of architecture, which we would never have done in the middle of town. So it's a very interesting development. And some of it's big scale, other of it's low scale, and this idea of a recreative area along the harbour front here, promenade, and this new recreative swimming pool are all developments have taken place in these last 3 years, 4 years, and another hotel is going to be built here very shortly, conference centre. So this area here, there's roughly 8,000 people living there now after 8 years. So there's actually a possibility of making restaurants, cafes, and a upmarket restaurant here. Let's look at this. This is designed by Big Architects. This is by Slett. This is also by Big, 3XN, CF Muller, some very recognised architects. And the thing was that this is procurement routes through the council. The council have been selling the land with architecture. I say with architecture because it being the city architect, you have to make the best project. So locally, we get the most value for money and the best architecture when we're selling the sites. And this is something that's happened here. This is the Iceberg project, designed by Zebra Architects and 3 other architect firms on the harbour front. This is earlier picture. This is when the World Championships for sailing took place in our harbour area. And this is the current status along the edge of one of the piers here, where this is a building site fence behind this. This is a livable building site fence, temporarily. And there's just been removed, and they're actually making more permanent structures here. But this has caused a hell of a lot of activity. You can see this, deck chairs, swimming area here. cafes, restaurants, eating places. And it's this university town with 55,000 students. So there's a lot of young people down here. Whilst we were building this area, this central space between the 4 different piers was left concrete. And we said, well, you know, why don't you do something about it? I said, no, we wait until people are actually living here so they can actually have a piece of the cake, decide what's going to happen and what it's going to look like. So there's a lot of civic engagement with all these different, there's pension funds, there's private developers. A lot of the apartments are sold privately, some of them are rented out, some of them are affordable. 25% of the housing here are affordable housing. So it's not a rich man's ghetto, it's actually a mixture. And this, for example, this is social housing by Lisbjerg with Adept Architects. This is facing the sailing boat harbour, but it's a magical little community around an urban block. You have student accommodation here, 180 rooms. Then you have family homes here, varying from 2 to 4 bedrooms. And each staircase, a tenement building, right, has a separate winter garden at the roof. So this is their shared area. Each of these apartments have a place up there if they want to. So the Housing Association gave each staircase some money to make planting and buy furniture and things like this for each accommodation. It's one of the most successful developments, I think, on the harbour area. And this model has actually become a footprint for the next urban structures being made going towards the centre using brick, not so much concrete, but brick and natural materials. Now, something completely different. I mean, Stephen, you just mentioned you've been awarded after, was it 10 years of use? I went over to Malmo to see this development by BO01 in Malmo. This development, this is 12 years ago, it's finished. I went to see it this last summer. I just love this intimacy, and a lot of things that Stephen's been talking about here earlier today are actually, you can recognise in the planning here. These small urban blocks within the master plan and these different footprints. And please note, there's no cars coming in here. It's only for servicing. Parking is all underneath. It's hidden away. So all the pictures I'm going to show you now, there's hardly any cars at all whatsoever. It's a fantastic place. I mean, the scale of the developments, out towards the seafront here, obviously is quite tall. These blocks here, and in the summer, this is just so popular with people, citizens of Malmo. And then you come into the interior of this space. I'm talking about, you'll not find any walls built here, front gardens or anything like this. This is all dealt with, creating soft edges to your accommodation, creating some kind of a safe space, which is yours, rather than fixing it up with fences and things like you see often here. All the water becomes visible, rainwater water is kept visible in the urban realm. And lots of different architects working on this project. It's not one architect, it's a mixture of all types. Different examples here of the architecture. And this is 12 years old, right? It's just getting better and better and better. Look at this. I mean, this here, personal space, planting, visible water channels. It's a bit like Cambridge. You know, you have the beautiful channels with visible water. And there's a rich array of colours going on here. And I mean, one of the larger collections of water brought in here. All this accommodation along the edges here. The biodiversity, see the butterflies and bees and things here during the summer. It's absolutely magical. Yeah, it's one of my favourites. It's just the shading. It's almost like one of your illustrations earlier, Stephen. I can't remember the scheme, but a shadow on the wall, this intimacy of the stones here. I'm wondering whether or not the people living here put these stones in because it feels very local. And back to Aarhus. One of the sites we sold as a council, they have a developer-led project. And we have 5 different developers bidding to buy this site here. Right next to the Botanical Gardens. The old town here, which is a collection of buildings brought from all over Denmark and rebuilt a little town. And I was part of the judging of these processes here. So this whole site here became available for development. And every one of the designs made this development here and with small developments there. This scheme did something different. I'll come on to this. One of the big challenges we're facing is the scale of the developments. You know, obviously we want a higher density. It's roughly 200% building in relation to the site itself. So it's quite tall. But to reduce the scale of things, they've actually made these type of mansard roofs, bringing the scale in the streets down. So there's a hybrid of different types of architecture. There's the grey building, the red building, the black building, the red building. All the windows are the same colours as the brick or the colouring. So it's building up a certain identity. And look at this edge along here. This is all new. And the parking is arranged along the edge here, with these small pockets of space for landscaping. This is just 1 year old, this project, just finished. So, you call it a distinct neighbourhood. We've given it an award in the council for beautiful architecture. And I just love this. You know, there's a little family living here on the ground floor, or the two-story accommodation here. And then it's 2 stories, mezzanine apartments. But this, bringing their floor mats out. It's not cut off behind walls again. It's open, but it's your space. Viewing into the courtyard, viewing out of the courtyard on the right. One of the big challenges we're facing is cycles, having enough parking space for the bikes. There are underground parking here in the development, but there's surface cycling around here. But you see here, this is in the courtyard. This is a typical example of the typology. You have the urban block on the outside, and in the courtyard of lots of these urban footprints are smaller units where they used to have workshops and things like this in the courtyard. Now, you see, look, this is the natural led biodiversity. This grass is not cut. It's allowed to grow. And it's incredibly popular. And you can see it's all around here. And you've got the small area here, the visible water challenge again. Similarly here, water running along the edge here, and a small island of planting. It's really wild. It's a lovely, very captivating environment inside there. You know, you're not going around cutting the grass every week like you're doing at home. This is allowed to grow. Another scheme just along the road, it's just to say that, this is a brick building, this is a brick roof. When they came with this proposal as a private development, we said we would like, they're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories. We want the 2 upper stories to be like a roof, like the neighbouring development. So I said, okay. So they made it in brick and cut the balconies into it instead of making dormer windows. I love this scheme because the balconies are not stuck on the outside, they're integrated in the facade. So there's a typology here. And the whole insisted upon the ground floor has to be accessible for shops, restaurants, cafes, and things like this. And it's actually turning out well. This is the same developer doing these schemes. So there's 3 different types of architecture here, blocks. Looking further down the street, this is the new architect school. It's on the old freight yard site. And this is a new building. I was involved with a belvedere or colonnade along here. All these shops are rented out. Path along here, protected area with landscaping, parking on the other side. So on the outskirts of town, going towards suburbia, where the light railway line runs up here along the edge of the town. We're building a town for 25,000 people here and one for 15,000 on the edge here. One is called Lisbjerg and the other one is called Nu. I'm not going to talk about this one, but this is where the university hospital is. So it's on the edge of town, in the countryside, on a greenfield site. This one at Lisbjerg, it's been built on an area where the farms are on the inner city, in the town area, with radial land fields, with planting. And these are the different themes. I'm not going to read them up. You can see it, you get the presentation afterwards. But the whole thing is landscape led. It's very, very important in terms of, trying to instigate for the developers when they sell the sites from the council. All these pointers have to be taken into account. And this is the master plan, zoning conjunction with Van Kunsten. You'll see this name again shortly. And I'm going to zoom in on a couple of sites here, which I find very interesting, worthwhile discussing. This one, designed by Linear Architects. They're famous in Denmark for working with recyclable materials in their projects. It's called Made in Aarhus, because the materials they're using on the facades here are sourced from projects which have been demolished or reused in Aarhus. And these are lots of different types of accommodation, 1 story, 2 story, 3 story, 4 story in some places. But you see they're made of timber. Again, all the suds are included in each courtyard. So all the water from the surface of each development has to be dealt with on each site. And I love this. I mean, this is a shared space for the local kids to play with, or you could hang your clothes out there and dry. It's been generous in terms of giving something back to that community. This is looking the other way. There's another. This is where the staircase is, of course, lifts. You know, you see the child areas here. You know, bikes. These are not locked. These chairs are not chained to the walls or anything. They're all. You can nick them if you want to. But Denmark's got the highest level of trustworthiness in the world. So you don't expect anything like that to happen. It's a slightly different situation here, I think. But I love it. And the bikes, these are locked, I know this, but someone could take it by mistake. But these are wing tiles from roofs, sourced from buildings that have just been regenerated or renovated. So nailed onto the facades. And they give a very nice texture. So there's a really nice feel of, texture and qualities of materials in the projects. And these are all sort of, it's not asphalt, it's porous surfaces. And the ground, the grass is not cut. It's got a quite nice relaxed feel. I do like this one. There is a bit of fencing here, see that? It's probably because they have a dog. But, you've got your barbecue machine here, seating area, stones, landscaping and things. These have only been finished 1 year. Another scheme very close by. This is one of the first projects built by Van Kunsten with a very intimate scale. If you look at the plan, it's small units, pockets of parking here and here between the buildings. 5 years later, it's patterned like this. It's large, so it's gone grey. I think it looks really good. That's another example here. The new community. This building here was on site, obviously when it was being built at that time. But the picture I started with is this one, designed by Big. This is by Loop. This is by Art Architects. There's a whole bunch. This is private development taking place as we speak. The developer called Tekka has bought this whole area on the northern part of town. He's developing these. Some of them are rented, and some of them have been privately owned. So this is a loop project. This is the first ones built there, made of timber, built around this small pond, bringing all the water together. I mean, the gutters are built in on the timber roofs here. Look, there. I'm not sure how the insurance company would do with that in the UK, but it looks dead good, doesn't it? Another timber scheme next door. These are all CO2 neutral projects. CLT constructions. Play area. I did a guided tour. I'm on the executive board of architect firm called Norpeel. And we're on this study trip, and I encourage them to play on the play area. And this is architects having a bit of fun. And this is a scheme I just mentioned. It's called the Snail Houses by Big Architects. You can see this is a similar scheme they've made in Copenhagen. But you see, these are living spaces. They're a lot taller than the ones where they have the bedrooms. So they've like these boxes put in on top of each other. a modular kind of system around this pond in the middle. And this is 2 years old now. The lake itself, the housing has just been completed. And here the local people arrange these different social events for eating and stuff together. It's become very popular, so full with families with kids. And please notice, where's the fencing? There's no fencing here. The kids have to learn with their parents not to fall in. It's a bit like Venice, you know, you don't have handrails around Venice. That's in the other project running up here is made of brick. These are will be sold. The other projects here are rented. These ones here, these are privately owned. And they're just being finished now. And inside one of these blocks, so the next scheme by Seaver Architects, they're going to be putting these off-site produced houses on pilotis, columns, so they don't have to do, you know, foundation work and spoil the landscape. So it's another way of working with the landscape where they have a sloping landscape here. And see the nature again? Just let it grow. And the developer here, there aren't 8,000 people here, but he knows to get people to move here, he has to sponsor this kind of shop. And they have fantastic wines. And people are coming from all over the place. They have events, wine tasting. They do, what do you call it? Fantastic products. And all naturally sourced in farms locally. So it's an eco shop. And people are coming here just to buy their banana cakes, you know, all these different fruit cakes. Time's going. Just regarding these clusters and housing, this is a typical housing scheme diagrammatically. But the same numbers of housing have been positioned in a different way on the site. And the landscape is arranged here. So the forest is in here. So they're arranged in a not complete circle, but slight circular form, different orientation. You'll see there's no walls around the edges, creating defensible spaces and things. It's all quite open. And it's looking like this. This is going to be built in a place called Middelfart on Funen. There's one of the schemes here, another one here, different type of form, all made of timber and super eco properties. It's possible. Another smaller scheme in a rural setting. This is a station town. This has been built as a market space. Looks something like this on the interior. I love it. I love the timber structure. At the end of here is a little shop. You buy local products and things. Well, what I want to show is this project here. It's a co-living community for senior living, plus 50s. I say senior living, you know, I should really say plus 60, right? But
64.
64, 65. No, but this is the first stage that's been built by Van Kunsten. And the pink units are shared properties in the middle. So this is what it looks like in timber. This is just after it was built. I have a couple of pictures where it's been in use. Again, you can see this is all kind of common area. You're living in, you've got these rather nice small units, beautiful light coming in. And you have a shared garden, winter garden, terraces. This shared eating place, library. It's a shared accommodation. And I know everything's rented out. What are you laughing at?
Too much sharing.
Yeah, well, another example of a station town.
It's a joke.
Is this one called Malling on the outskirts of Aarhus. And there's an industrial silo here. But this is the scheme here. I mean, this building's been a bit run down. The high street here is being regenerated. People are waking up and are interested in working in a place like this, living in a place like this. They have a small cinema in the town. Well, this is a rather interesting scheme. I call it a little bit stealth, you know, in terms of its roof form and things. The way the apartments are been arranged. A lot of it's only been finished. So there's some of the properties are not quite used yet. But you see, this is just opening up straight from the living room. You can look into the rooms here. See, these are all quite visible. So there's different forms of visual protection, but it's very sculptural. And you can see you can go through the development and central parking area on the just on the outskirts here. Just see that parking areas here, a little bit of parking down here. It's not in the development, so it's quite a compact development. But it's got a very distinctive architecture and a feel about it, which I feel is adventurous. Designed by Zebra architects. So another scheme on the outskirts of Aarhus, social housing for AAB Housing Association, designed by Rubel Architects, a competition scheme. This is the second stage. It's not been built yet. So these are the developments I'm going to show you here. But there's a small beck. Beck means pond or river. Yeah, Beck, it's the same in Scottish, isn't it? Beck.
Cumbrian.
Yeah, Cumbrian. Sorry. So the suds are integrated into the development here. Also in the central parts of it. I mean, this is just after it was built. I do these pictures when they've been built and then to come back later to see how they're doing. I was involved in the competition for this, following this up. And this is the central street, parking pockets, small gardens in front, small sheds, integrated into the access porticos here. Oh, I think I should show that one. So these types of entrance porticos have a nice threshold between the entrance area, place for parking perhaps here, but also, dry your clothes or whatever. The second stage will look like this. This is another type, the development here I've just shown you. This is a competition won by Studio All, Atelier Lauritz and Lankiller and Stay. They've arranged the accommodation around these small clusters. So it's one cluster, but small clusters as well. It's a very attractive small development, 2 stories high again. I think there's a very nice feel about this. And this whole shared area by this whole community. So they've got one development here and this one leads in. You see very porous edges, so it's not asphalted. So coming towards the end now, right on the edge of Aarhus, there was a farm, thatch building, timber frame, where the developer came to us and said, we want to get rid of this, we want to build some new housing here, student accommodation. I said, you can't get rid of that. It was a low listed building, but he said, try and reinvent the use of it, take care of it. And so the young architects who took it on, these are the original buildings here, and they built all these new ones, creating small pockets, small street, see here, no gutter, water just runs off, like with the thatch building. But this small one here, it's invaluable because it cuts it off from, the road on the outside and makes this very nice courtyard. And then, there's a very nice intimate feel. It's almost like walking through Hans Christian Andersen's time, But these are all timber frame buildings, sort of inspired by this beautiful old timber frame project here. But the zinc roof. So the old building, some of it's got zinc and some of it's got thatch. So it's a very nice feel about it. And one of the old buildings has been retained and is used as a shared eating place, and laundrette, and kitchen, and things like this. Very popular. And each student accommodation is got a gallery in it. It's a little ladder up, little kitchen, toilet, sleeping upstairs, and it works incredibly well. And finally, just rounding off in terms of rural communities, this is the 16 town villages here. This community here was more or less a lot of people migrating, leaving the area. The school was going to close down. You recognize this. People are moving into town. And some people in this place called Femmüller, is a woman, a mother of some children, said, no, we're going to make this, we're going to keep this school. We're going to make it into a private school. They started talking with the council. Said, we need to keep this. We can't have these empty schools and village halls, things like this. We need to start talking together. So they organised this together with Abeltoft Town Council. And they started helping to facilitate the junction between these different communities. So they all started working together. The Knebel's the largest one. And they started using a local village hall here and another one here, Willacy. And the senior citizens are making events with children groups, reading sessions, baking. So there's a kind of win-win. The elderly love the small ones, and the small ones love the elderly. And there's all these different stories come out from their childhoods. It's a really nice generation move here. So this example here has started something where there's 29 of these communities all over Denmark, dotted everywhere, where they've been monitored, and the organisation behind these has actually just closed down 1st of January 2023 because of the success. Things are running themselves now. So when you talk about the communities you're working with now, and I mentioned it today in our crits, that maybe there's possibilities of working in collaboration with each other to actually reinvent this type of community here. And so we can't do it all on our own, but together we can. So on that thing about sharing and village clusters, I'd just like to say thank you very much.